Hi everyone, welcome to day 3 of our Beadalong. I hope you started yesterday with your netting and that's all going well. And I hope you have joined the group. If you haven't, the link is down below in the description. So make sure you go and join our little group on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, that's fine. You can still bead along. You just won't be able to see everybody else's stuff. Okay, so today we're going to be practicing Ogalala stitch. Is this a stitch that you've ever tried? I really love this stitch. I made 2 pairs of earrings recently with this stitch, and I just made a long length and then kind of wove it around and about and in a random way and sewed the base together, and I'll show you those on the screen right now. And the really fun thing about this stitch is you can do color variations as you go. So you could start with a row of yellow and then a row of orange and then a row of red and then a row of purple or whatever, that's the really fun thing. So here today, this is what we're about to make, but I just made a little bit that looks like ocean colors, sort of, and look, it looks like a wave, which was my idea. You could do it as the beach as well, or you can curl it up into a little ball and use it for maybe you want to make an interesting coral. So it has a lot of uses. I think it's a very pretty ruffle, and it is netting. Yesterday we did netting. This is just netting that gets bigger as it grows. Okay, so I will come back in a minute and we'll get started. Okay, so to begin our Ogalala stitch, I'm going to put on a stop bead. I find that helpful, so I'm just using a contrasting 8/0 out of my bead soup little stash here. So just leave your tail like you normally would and sew through it again from the tail end, so that it forms a loop like this, and then that'll keep your beads on, but you can still slide it up and down, and you can remove the stopper bead when you need to at the end easily. Okay, so the beginning of Ogalala stitch, you need to pick up in groups of 3. So you can pick up 3, 6, 9, 30, 120, but it has to be divisible by 3, and you want to pick up as long as your project is. So you're going to pick up 3 seed beads, push them down to your stitch, your stopper bead, and then just keep picking up 3 until you get to the length that you want. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna just do a short little section, but you want to pick up as long as the section is. So if you're doing it as like the side of your necklace, for instance, like I am, I'm gonna have to pick up a big long piece, because remember, I also want to curve mine around. So so you're gonna pick up as long as you need your length of Ogalala to be, but make sure you're picking up in 3s. So you want it divisible by 3. So I'm going to pick up maybe 30, and I'll come back in a second. Okay, so I've picked up my 30. I'm just doing a little short bit. So, and I've double checked that you have picked up the right number, and it is divisible by 3. So I've just marked them into little groups of 3 and gone along and just checked that I picked up the right number of beads. Okay, so once you've got that and you push it down, you're going to sew into the second bead. So there will be a little, this is our turning bead here on the end, so we will have a little bit of thread that goes around the bead right here. See that? Think of it as like the end of a fringe, okay? It's just a little turning bead there at the end. Okay, so now we're gonna again pick up 3. And we're gonna skip. So I'm coming out this second bead right here. I'm gonna skip the next 2 beads and I'm gonna sew into the 3rd bead. So from the bead I'm exiting, there's 2 more beads and then I'm sewing into the 3rd bead. And what that's gonna do, if we look here, it means we have 2 underneath, but we have 3 going over the top. So it's already beginning our ruffle. So I'm gonna pick up 3 more beads. And I have 2 beads right here. So I'm coming out from that one. I'm skipping these 2 and I'm gonna sew into the 3rd bead with my 3, and it's gonna start to form little peaks like this, and it's also gonna start curving in a second once we add our 3rd group. So again, I'm picking up 3, so this whole way down you're just picking up 3, skipping 2 and sewing into the next bead. And it doesn't matter if it kind of curls around a little bit, that's totally fine. It's going to want to do that because it doesn't like having so many beads on the top. So just keep going along, picking up your 3, skipping 2 and sewing into the 3rd bead. Okay, so it should start to look like this, kind of a little bit raggedy, okay? If it starts to get loose, just push your stop bead back up again. But you do need it to be a little bit loose just so you can get your needle in there. I will finish going along here and then I'll come back in a second. Okay, so I'm just approaching the end here with my last stitch. So I have 3 beads left. And I'm going into that last bead before my stopper bead. And this bead will become our turning bead, just like at the other end. Okay, so I'm gonna just basically skip around this bead. And so I'm not going into the very end bead that I'm coming out of, but I'm on the hump that goes over, the 3 that are going over. I'm going to sew up the first 2. So I'm coming out of the 2nd one, okay? So I just sewed over. I didn't sew back into my end bead. I just sewed up the first 2 of the group of 3, okay? So now I'm going to start my 2nd color, and for this we're going to pick up 5. So Ogalala stitch expands by 2, so you pick up, first you pick up 3, then you pick up 5, then you pick up 7, and then you can pick up 9 if you want. You can keep going, like, you know, however big you want it to be. So I'm going to pick up 5 of this blue color here, and I'm coming out of the 2nd one here. I'm going to sew into the 2nd one on my next bump. So where the 3 are, I'm sewing into the next like hump of the, I'm going to pick up 5 more. So this time I'm just going all the way along, picking up 5, and I'm sewing into the 2nd one on the side that has 3 beads that we just added. So remember that your work might have twisted, so you may need to kind of flip, turn it so that you're going into the right one. That's fine. Just make sure that you're going into the second bead of the group of 3. Okay. So I'm just going to do that all the way along, and I will come back when I reach the other end and show you what to do. Okay, so I just sewed into my last little bump right here. So we're just going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're going to skip the bead that we're coming out of, and we're going to sew up the next 3 beads of the group that we just added in the last group of 5. So just turn and don't sew into the one that you're coming out of on the lower hump. Just turn and go straight up the next 3. Okay, so now we're going to pick up 7 groups of 7. So I'm going to use this other blue color here. So that's 5, 6, 7. So we're going to be putting groups of 7, and we're just going to sew into the 3rd bead on each bump of 5. So all you have to do is pick up 7 and sew into that 3rd bead, which is the middle bead of the group of 5. So I'll just do that one more time here. Just check, it gets a little harder sometimes when we're picking up more beads. You don't want to accidentally skip a bead. Just double check. So it now looks like this, and you can kind of see it's getting bigger, and if we flatten it out, it's starting to really wrinkle up a little bit. So I'll go all the way along to the end. When I sew into that last group of 3, I'm just going to turn and I'll come back and show you what to do at that point. Okay, so I'm just sewing my 7 beads into my last little bump of the 5. So just add that on like you normally would. And then here to turn, again, we don't sew into the bead that we're coming out of. We're just going to turn and we're going to sew up the next 4 beads, which will make us come out the middle of our group of 7. So if I can get in there. I'll do 1 bead at a time. Sometimes it's a little easier. Okay. So you can see that I'm coming out from the 4th bead, which is the middle bead of my group of 7 here. And so now we're going to be picking up 9, and I'm going to be using this white Ceylon color for that. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, and we're going to be, you're going to have to count. We're going to be sewing into the 4th bead, which will, again, will be the middle bead of our group of 7 on the next thing over. Okay, so we're getting, you can see it getting bigger and bigger as we go. So go ahead and add your 9 onto your groups of 7. I'm going to do one more so you can kind of see how it starts to look. Let me just double check that's 9. Yep, okay. Hooray. Always good when you get it right. Okay, so you can see how fun it is to have the different colors kind of changing as you go, and it really starts to get wavy and curvy and interesting. So I'm going to go along until I reach the end, and then I'll turn and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I've just finished my group of 9, and I'm coming out my 4th bead of this group here. So I'm going to turn, and I'm going to go up 2 beads right here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a picot. You don't, now this row is optional. You do not have to do this. I just want to do it because I'm making water and I want it to look splashy. And I think it makes a pretty edge because the stitch naturally gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you go. I feel like it can look a bit gappy on this side, so I think the picot kind of helps fill it in. But like I say, it's completely optional. You do not have to do this bit, okay? So what we're going to do, coming out the second bead here, I'm going to pick up 3 of my picot beads, and I'm using this frosted crystal color. And I'm going to sew back into the bead that I am coming out from, plus 3. So I'm going through 4 beads in total. So this is the bead that I was coming out. I'm going through that one plus 3. When I pull it, it's going to make a little bump like that, okay? And then I'm going to pick up 3 more for my next picot, because you'll notice on our group of 9 here, we're coming out from the 5th bead, which is the middle bead. So I'm going to sew into the opposite side of that bead plus 3. Okay. And one more time, I'm going to pick up 3, my picot beads. I'm going to sew into that bead plus the very end bead there, okay? And then I do not usually sew through this bead. I usually skip and sew up the next 2 beads. I just feel like it makes it a little bit more pulled together and nicer if you skip that blue bead in the middle there, okay? So I do exactly the same thing on this group. I pick up my 3, I sew back into the bead I'm exiting from, plus my 3 beads. So it's really easy because you just have to remember 3 a lot. Make sure you don't get looped around your last picot like I did. Okay, so yeah, just keep going. Picking up your 3, sewing into that bead, plus 3 more. So your picots should be situated on beads 2, 5, and 8, okay? And you can see how cute that is with the little added kind of ruffle at the top. So I'm going to finish going along and then I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, so I got to the end here. I would just tie a knot now and tie off my thread and then tie in your tail by going up. You can even sew your tail up, meet your thread here, and tie them together and then sew in the ends. But you can see how that really kind of just gives it a little bit more frilly look to it than what we had before. And this little length right here kind of reminds me of one of those fan corals, actually. And you could sew them together, sew it together like that even, in a little fan. So I can't wait to see what you think of this stitch. I mean, I love it, as you know. So, okay, so now I'm going to show you something else really quickly, how we can attach it onto our netting. So if you look at our netting that we did before, look at this. We have an edge with 2 beads and then like a gap. So there is nothing to stop us from sewing along this edge and adding a 3rd bead. And then we have the base for our Ogalala stitch, because what do we have here? Look, we have 2 in between a third bead. That's right. So if we had a bead here and here, look, it would match up perfectly. You see what I mean? So what you can do, you can stitch your Ogalala directly along the edge of your netting if you've done the 2-drop netting. So you can just add a bead in each of these gaps, then you've got your base. Then when you add your 3, you're just going to sew into each of those, the bead that you added in each gap. So you're going to go 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and then you can just do your 5, your 7, your 9, and your picot. So, I mean, if this is the ocean, I could do the ocean floor, or I could do a wave. So there's a lot of possibilities with this Ogalala stitch, and you can even here, you've got groups of 2 and groups of 3. You could do it along diagonally like that. It will very easily fit. Sorry, you can't even see what I'm showing you. We have groups of 3, like 1, 2, there's a third one, 1, 2, there's a third one, 1, 2, there's a third one. So you could stitch your Ogalala directly on to here if you wanted to. Have like splashing waves going across. So there's a lot of possibilities with this, and don't forget you can also wind it up into a kind of knot and make an interesting coral out of this as well, which is kind of fun. So have fun. I cannot wait to see what you guys think of this stitch and what you do with it. I would love to see some people sewing onto their netting with it. I think that would be really fun, sewing along the edge of their netting. So have a think, how do you want to use it? And make sure to share in the group. I will see you guys tomorrow.